Alessandra, as we get rolling here, I would love to just introduce you to everyone that's tuning in. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what your role at Crossroads Church is down in Florida. Give us just a 2-minute synopsis of who it is that you are and what you do.
Yeah, so thanks. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Alessandra, and I'm the Director of Communications here. And for a lot of folks who work in churches, it's probably just like anyone else in the sense that I wear a lot of hats here. So my main things would be working on the website, anything media-wise that we put out, be it printed or digital, that goes out. And then, honestly, I just help with a lot of other various things with sometimes Sunday morning production and really just communicating with our members and attenders alike so that they know what's going on here at the church.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so tell me, what is it that got you into ministry in the first place?
Well, interestingly enough, I was driving by the church one day and on a whim just pulled into the parking lot. And through a series of events got connected here at the church. And when I walked in the door here, I had not been to a church in a long time. And I immediately felt welcomed and loved. And, I just knew that I had to be a part of helping other people feel that. The hospitality here was palpable. And I honestly just felt like I'd walked into a home. And so in my brain, I was like, how do we recreate this? I knew so many people that maybe had poor church experiences before or even had no church experiences before. And I wanted them to be able to feel what I was feeling and get that same kind of love that can really only come from a church.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And so tell us just a little bit more about Crossroads. So, you're saying that this place, the hospitality was palpable. You said, it seems like you connected right away, but give us kind of a broader picture. The way you describe that, I'm thinking like, okay, this is a little teeny tiny church, but that's not actually the case. So tell us a little bit more about Crossroad.
Yeah, thanks. It's funny that you say that, Tyler, because we kind of feel the same way. We actually are a bigger church, but for whatever magic reason that God has concocted, we feel like we act like a small church to where you can walk in the building and somebody knows your name and somebody knows your family, they know your kids, and they ask how they're doing. And so we are a big church. Right now, we've probably got about 350 people worshiping with us on a Sunday. Before COVID, we had something more like 650. So when you walk in, there's a lot of people. It can be really overwhelming, but somehow we just have this amazing team of folks that are so hospitality minded that they want to make sure that folks feel God's love when they walk in the door. And so they're not afraid to say hello. They're not afraid to walk up to somebody who might look lost and step outside their own comfort zone to really just welcome folks in.
Yeah, and I know you guys started using Text in Church a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago now. How has that played into this radical hospitality that you guys display on a daily basis in person? How about in the digital world? Does Text in Church play a role in that for you guys?
So Text in Church has been huge. I have to assume that it was only God that got us connected with Text in Church in February of 2020, because immediately after that is when we were desperately looking for ways to connect with folks. What do you do when you have been going to church for 20 years or whatever, and that is where your community is, and that's how you ask for prayer, and that's how you connect with folks, and maybe that's the only way that you're getting any kind of community and seeing God's love in action. And so Text in Church very quickly enabled us to immediately pick communication back up after COVID had started, and be connected with our members in a way that we really would not have been able to do otherwise. Honestly, it was a game changer for us. It really was.
Yeah, and I know you guys are leveraging Text in Church in lots of different ways, but for a moment, let's just kind of talk about one thing that you all did during the pandemic was you started doing weekly Bible readings. And can you kind of unpack what started that concept for you, and then kind of how that played out for you?
Yeah, so we really, I'm sure like churches and people all over the place, we're sitting in a room going, what do we even do? Like, what do we do? We can't meet in person, and we wouldn't want to because it wasn't safe, and safety was of paramount importance at the time. And so how do we continue to remind people that God loves them and God sees them and hears them and knows what we are going through in this time? We have too big of a church to be personal phone calls. We did have some phone trees that we very quickly worked up for folks that didn't have technology at their fingertips, but we very quickly came up with an idea of like, what if we just sent something out every week? Could we send a text out? Could we remind people that God is here and that he's hearing them, and even in this moment that he is present with us, walking through this with us? And so somebody suggested on the team that we send out a weekly Bible reading. And so we tied that in with our sermon series. So each week we would sit down, the pastor and the team, and come up with scriptures that went with Sunday's message. And sometimes we would include a video, sometimes we would include other things, but we would send that out with questions to invite folks to dig a little bit deeper. And then for us, really, probably the biggest part of that was sending out a text each week as well. So we would send out the Bible readings via email on Sunday, and then partway through the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we would send a text. And most weeks it was a question. It was asking our folks how they were, how they received the Bible readings, did they need prayer, different things. And we were able to connect with folks every week. We got tons and tons of these responses back. People were having real communication, real conversations with us, and describing things that they were going through. And, especially at that time, people were scared. They needed somewhere that they knew they could turn to for prayer, for calm, for peace, for God's peace. We weren't giving it to them, it was God, but he was using us as a conduit and using text and church to let folks know and remind them that God was still there.
Well, I think one thing that I'm picking up on that I think you guys did brilliantly, and maybe this was the decision you made, or maybe you guys just accidentally took this approach, but you said that when you were sending out these text messages, oftentimes it was a question. And a question is the perfect way to do this because it solicits a response, right? Like you weren't just sending these texts out because you were just simply trying to give them information. You were trying to engage with them. You were trying to have conversation, to do ministry. Texting was just the mode that you were using. And so I think that was a really brilliant strategy on your team to start those conversations. And then my guess is, if you think back and you try to remember, like, what was the one or two instances where you just recognized, wow, this was so powerful, it's because of a conversation that took place. And there was probably it ended up being prayer, and there ended up being like a story being told. And it's all because you started that with a really intentional, smart question that then drove that conversation. Am I right in that assumption?
Yeah, and we weren't just getting responses back from people that we knew were involved in the church. We were getting folks connected that we had not previously known to be connected. Now, they may have been coming here for a long time or not. They may have been new, but for whatever reason, they had slipped through the cracks and just been sitting in a pew and doing whatever. So we were getting responses back from people that we had no information on. We didn't know their name. We didn't know any other information. And so for them to respond back and say, yeah, actually, could you be praying for this? Could you be praying for that? And then for us to continue that conversation and find out more about them and more about their family and connect them further from there. So it wasn't even just the question, it was being the follow-up conversations that happened. And from there, if somebody really needed it, having our staff follow up with them via phone. And so,
taking it to the next level. That's that's exactly why Texan Church was built. We're passionate about not just providing a tool where you can just get information out, although you can do that. That's like every texting platform in the whole world can do that, right? What we want to be able to do is to facilitate ministry opportunities. And we want you to leverage SMS and email to actually do ministry. And that's exactly what you all wound up doing in really beautiful and profound ways during one of the hardest times we've ever lived through. So really, really proud of you guys for thinking outside the box, pivoting. Like, it's every small church out there, every local church out there was forced to figure this out. And it's really incredible when we talk with church leaders who stepped up in all of these incredibly creative ways to figure out how to do ministry. No one knew how to do this. We were figuring it out as we went. And we did a really, really good job. Could we have done better? Sure, maybe. But given the circumstances, like, we have a lot to be proud of. And we were able to reach so many people during the pandemic. Like, you were sharing that your all's attendance numbers are down, and I know that's probably something you guys are working really hard to figure out and to drive back up and continue to grow as you guys have for the past 25 years. But the piece that I think is so important is we also started conversations with people that had no intention of coming to our church during the pandemic. So we were able to go into their Facebook feeds while they were sitting at home, not intending to worship, and then accidentally they realize, oh, oops, I just watched 5 minutes of this sermon, or I just watched 5 minutes of this worship. They didn't even mean to do it. And now they're starting to enter into our ecosystem. And I fully expect that over the next years, those people that have these small interactions with us in a digital world are going to start to walk in the doors of our church. And it might not be right away, and I don't expect it will be right away, but I do think that over time, when something happens in their life and they feel connected to God in this really small way, that's when they're going to take those steps. And so we've laid the groundwork for some really amazing things. And so just wanted to really congratulate you guys on how you stepped up in that way. Let me just ask one other question. What made you all think to leverage Text in Church as the tool to implement that strategy?
To be honest, in the moment, we didn't really have a whole lot else that was quick. The biggest thing for us, Text in Church was super, super fast to onboard. The user interface, to use a bigger word maybe, was super easy. And so even though I'm pretty technologically adept, it was really fast to get us in and get a number going and be able to figure it out. There's so many programs out there that are really great and do wonderful things, just like Text in Church. But the fact that it was so fast and so easy, I mean, we could have an idea and have it ready to go in less than an hour and have it out to our people. And, in that time, everything was fast. Every 5 minutes, things were changing and we were having to come up with new ideas. And so we needed something that was quick, that we could very quickly let our people know that God was here and that we had a plan and God had a plan and all of that.
Well, and one other thing, I know the way you guys set this up is you did not leverage our automated workflows, right? Like you could have gone in and built some elaborate system to be able to do all this, but instead you all took the simple route. And I think most often that's the best way. You took the simple route of saying, no, just each week we're going to send out this message. And you just did it as a one-off, going to the right people at the right time with the right message. So I thought that was a really smart strategy that you all used as well, rather than building out some elaborate automated workflow, which a lot of our users have. You can have a ton of success with that, right? If you automate the right things, it's a huge time saver. And we might talk more about where that fits in, but it's not perfect for every scenario. And so I wanted to point that out here, that like the strategy that you guys did, as brilliant as it was very, very simple, right? You didn't do anything complex. You kept it simple. And on our team, Jack Zelenko leads our marketing team. And that's something he always drives us to, is that simple always wins. Like as soon as you make it complex, you've made it way too hard. And simple doesn't mean easy. Oftentimes when you keep it simple, that's actually more challenging because you have to think through things on a deeper level sometimes. But really, really brilliant how you guys did that. And you just took what you had and rolled with it rather than trying to build some elaborate system. You just jumped right in. So I thought that was a really, really smart way of going about it.
Thanks. We since then have learned some more things of different ways to do it. But to be honest, we don't have a team of 30 staff members or anything like that. We've got a pretty lean team here. And so it had to be something that didn't take 30 people to get set up, that didn't take 4 days to figure it out. It had to be something that was quick, that one of us could implement, and to get the word out. And it worked perfectly.
Yeah. So let's shift gears here just a little bit. I know you guys also implemented some strategies around prayer requests and leveraging an online platform, a digital connection card, to be able to engage with people. Can you unpack that a little bit? Like, what was it like beforehand? And then once you implemented the same strategy using Text in Church, how did things change for you guys?
So, imagine that you have been going to church for a very long time and you have a prayer support system and you have friends and folks that you're close with that you ask for prayer. And most of the time you maybe do that in person on Sunday. And also you invite your pastors and the church staff, folks that you trust, to pray for you. And you do that by a paper prayer card. When you are not meeting in person, that doesn't exist. But prayer is still the most powerful thing that we maybe have in our toolkit. And so we had to come up with a way to invite folks to be able to do that, to connect not just with us, but with God, knowing that somebody was holding them up, somebody was supporting them. And so what we did was just, again, a very simple text the word prayer to this number, which is our church Text in Church number. And folks would text that in and get an automated response that said, reply with your prayer and your name unless you wish to remain anonymous. And somebody from our team will pray for you right now. And so around that, we built a new team of folks that were comfortable with technology, that would be able to respond, not just to pray in the moment, to stop and pray, which they do, but to then also respond in text form with a short version of that prayer. And then from there, we send an email to our staff. So we decide from there if somebody needs to follow up with that person, check back in them in a week, call them, anything more personal than that. But I think the unique thing that we did was inviting folks to send a prayer and get an immediate and instant response. And not only that, we've used it since then on some outreach things that we have done. We've put that out to families that were coming to receive meals from Feeding Northeast Florida and said, how can we pray for you? We would love to pray for you. And we've gotten some responses from that as well. Just any positive experience that somebody can have with a church and with God is nothing but good.
Yeah. One of the things that we always talk about is we want our people to feel known and noticed and loved. And I feel like that epitomizes it, right? Like you gave them a simple opportunity to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm over here. And as soon as they did, you just showered them in love. That is another simple strategy. I feel like both of those, the one commonality between both of these things we've talked about so far is they're simple, right? Like this is something we've been doing. And when we were in person, it's a simple thing to do. And churches are all different, but I know you're at a United Methodist church. I'm a United Methodist. That's a normal thing where folks are going to come over and do that. And so you took what you knew to be the normal, what's expected, and you brought it to an online scenario. I'm curious. I know you guys have come back to worship now. Are you continuing to do the online, the digital version of this, or have you just shifted back completely?
Yeah, so in fact, we don't have any paper anywhere, so at least that folks can connect with. And so we continue to say from the pulpit each Sunday, we would love to join you in prayer. And so text prayer to da-da-da-da. We also have it on the back of the rows in front of everybody with a QR code and ways that they can connect, and that's one of them. And so each week we usually get some prayer requests from folks. And once again, we're still getting folks who maybe haven't connected with us any other way. They maybe aren't ready for the Connect card. And we do have a digital Connect card, which has been great. But maybe some people just aren't ready for that. But man, they're here because they need a connection with God right now because something is going on in their life this season. And that's what they need, is they need to know that God loves them. And exactly as you said, God knows them and sees them. And we do too.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said as well, in the United Methodist traditions. Oftentimes it's a very vulnerable thing to go and pray with someone. It's very, very personal and it's intimidating if we're being really honest and transparent around it. That's an intimidating thing for most people. But when you're doing it via text, it makes it a little easier. It's a little less intimidating. I'm just sending a text message. I don't even see the person. They can't see me. Like it helps. It facilitates a little bit of interaction there. Now, the other part of that is true. Like it's a little less personal. Like I think maybe the next step is, hey, let's do this in person. But it's an awesome first step or intermediary step to get to where you're ultimately trying to go. And could you share, do you have any stories? Do you have anything like moments where you were like, oh, wow, I can't believe this happened kind of coming out of there? Do you have any moments that you can think back and say, wow, I'm so glad we did it because this never would have happened without?
So one of my favorites, there's a young woman, I should say, who's really closer to my age, but just has been coming for a long time, years, and had just not been super connected. But she continued to ask for prayer via text. She's a big introvert and continued to ask for prayer via text for a number of weeks in a row. And so we got better connected as friends. And honestly, through the last year, she's now connected with a lot of young ladies in a Bible study, volunteers all the time. And we all know how hard it is to get volunteers in a church. So that was great. But the other part of that is I felt like I saw a gift in her, even in just a way that she was requesting prayer, that maybe God had something for her in serving on the prayer team. And so since then, she has actually started to be one of the folks who prays and responds to the text to people. And she loves it because she's an introvert and she can also kind of retain some of her own anonymity. But also she feels like she's doing something that God has called her to do and to pour back into the church that maybe was there for her when she needed it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very cool. I love how you're connecting her gifts in just the perfect way for her to be able to love on your community. That's a brilliant strategy again. Let's kind of back up for a minute and kind of look full circle at your experience with Texan Church. So when you all first started, you said you started just prior to the pandemic. What was the problem that you were having that you felt like Texan Church might be able to help with?
To be honest, folks were falling through the cracks, and that's going to happen. And is God going to still connect them to a place where they can worship and meet community? Yeah, of course. But we felt like we were missing this opportunity to pour into folks and to love them, that God had brought somebody to our doorstep and then we let them walk out the back door without any kind of connection or any kind of follow-up. And so that was originally why we started to do stuff with you guys, because we felt like Texan Church was maybe the answer to that, because it was simple, it was easy to get set up, and because it was pretty low trust required. And as I said, so many folks have a story of a not great church experience, and we didn't want to continue to repeat that. And so we felt like Texan Church was a great way to just kind of like, let's just start to build some trust with people. It's easy for everyone involved, for us and them, to just respond back for a question or answer or ask for prayer or anything like that. And so really that was why we started with everything. Just happened to work out great.
And as you all were making that decision, or prior to making that decision to try out Texan Church, what did it feel like as a church leader, as you were noticing, oh, I can't believe we let that person slip through the cracks? What was the emotions that you went through as a church leader, and kind of how has that transitioned since now having a system in place?
So, Tyler, it's frustrating. It's really hard, because we feel like we've been called to this job and we feel like we do it well. We wouldn't keep doing it if we didn't think that there was some success to be had in the way that we're doing it. We feel like we're sharing the gospel. We feel like we love people. And man, when they get connected, they are connected for life. They're in it. They've got these great relationships with people in the church. But man, that feels awful when somebody comes in and then you find out that they had a need that day. They needed prayer. They needed something. They couldn't find a small group. They're a single mom that was looking for other moms in the area. All of these kinds of scenarios that we've all been through. Sometimes it can keep you up at night. Church life is different. Church work is hard because you don't stop at 5 p.m. I think very few people do. And so it's not that we would lose sleep at night, but man, sometimes you go home and you're like, we missed that one. We missed. And as I said, are they going to get connected somewhere? Absolutely. But we felt like God had brought us somebody, and we really dropped the ball. And it was sad. It was heartbreaking, because when you believe in your church and you believe in your people and your volunteers and the way that God has invited you to speak into people's lives, and then you miss somebody, it's like, man. So it was really hard. It was awful.
Yeah. And Alice, that's exactly why Texan Church exists. Right? I was a part of a church plant here in Kansas City. My older brother's a church planter out in Sacramento. And we recognize that as a church leader, when things get really busy, the thing that's going to fall through the cracks are people, our relationships, are those moments that we could have connected with someone and we just didn't find the time to do it. And so Texan Church was created to help to solve that problem. It doesn't do it on its own. It's not a magic bullet, but it is super helpful in navigating some of those things. And so as you guys dove into Texan Church, you started off with a trial. What did you find that was different about Texan Church?
So the first thing was that not only was it easy to get us onboarded and ready and going, like I said, less than an hour, we had stuff ready to go. But the other part was that even though we weren't using all of these great workflows that you guys had, there was a lot of stuff that enabled us, a lot of steps that had already been done. And we continued to see other churches, bigger, smaller, all over the map really, that had used you guys and were really achieving success with that. And so that was probably the thing that stuck out the most. Not only that, but it's really important to me personally to see an organization or a company where people enjoy working there. And I know that sounds funny, but it's like you wouldn't go to a hairdresser that has awful hair, Yeah. And so if I'm looking for a company to partner with or an organization to partner with, I want to look for somewhere where the people believe in what they're doing. And so to me, you guys were it.
That's awesome. So can you take me to the moment, and I don't know if you can do this or not, but can you take me to the moment where you realized that Text in Church was actually going to solve some of these problems for you, where you're like, aha, we got it. This is we've made the right decision. What was that moment for you?
Oh, there's been like 30, but I'll just pick one or two. So probably the first one was right after we began sending out or inviting people to be a part of this Bible scripture group that we were going to send out each week. So the first Sunday, we had never done this before. We rarely and sometimes did like text in an offering. So texting was not even a thing that we were using a lot of in our services. The very first Sunday, we had 90 people sign up for it. And so that was kind of a moment where very quickly we were like, okay, we've maybe made the right choice here. And so since then, we actually grew to over 200 in that group. And for probably 8 or 9 months, we were sending out things every week. And then once we began to meet in person, it seemed like, we could kind of gradually go to something else with that. But man, that was the first time we were kind of freaking out on staff because we could not believe that many people had just immediately done it. And not only that, but that it was easy for them, that they could do it, because we've got a very wide mix of age ranges here. We've got plenty of folks who are, in their late teens, early 20s. We've got a lot of families that are in their 30s, low 40s. And then we've got a lot of people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so to be honest, we weren't sure how it was going to go. But man, I can remember that feeling in that moment. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. I love hearing those stories because it's that moment where you realize, okay, we now have a solution that's going to help us out long term, right? Like you're putting in the effort once to get everything up and running, and then you're able to reuse that effort over and over and over again for years to come, where when you have a message that you need to get out, when you need to check in on someone, you have an incredibly easy and simple way to be able to make that connection. So I love hearing stories like that. So can we fast forward now? So you've been using Text in Church now. What is life like now that you have that problem solved? How does that feel differently than prior to having Text in Church in your all's tool belt there?
So probably on a weekly basis, we are getting some kind of contact or request for prayer or something from a person that we have no other knowledge of besides that. And so the folks who maybe would just have come in and sat in the back and left on their own are now connecting either through our live stream on Facebook with the digital connect card, which is cool. We have folks that are doing a plan a visit, which is a whole other story in and of itself. We've got folks that are asking for prayer, and these are people that we have no other information on. And so we really feel like maybe we haven't solved the entire problem, because I feel like we can always be growing and always be learning, but we have really started to plug that hole where people were just walking out the door with no connection and not getting welcomed and loved. And so it has been fantastic. I mean, every week it surprises me, because we're getting through some means, always a Text in Church, some kind of way of somebody connecting with us. And it's so exciting. At our staff meetings every week, we do these God sightings where we share something positive that we've seen over the last week. And so many times it has been, wow, we connected with this new person. They had been coming for years and somehow we had never connected with them. And now they're connected because they asked for prayer and blah, blah, blah. And now they're in a group and all of these kinds of things. And so many of these stories are stemming from our beginning to use Text in Church. So it's been amazing. It's just really for us another way that God has been moving.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. And if there's a church leader out there who's on the fence about whether or not they should use Text in Church, what would you share with them?
So I feel like there's a long debate about whether technology is good or bad for the church. I feel like I see it all over the internet. I feel like I hear it in personal conversations. And here's the thing, is that technology isn't going anywhere. And so often I think we as the church forget that we are also a business, and there is a way that we have to connect with people and let them feel God's love. If they walk in our doors and back out our doors, that's a missed opportunity. And Text in Church makes it easy to connect people, not just with us, but to remind them that there's a God that loves them most and best. And that's the ultimate connection that we want to make. And so while like you said earlier, praying in person is going to be the best. But you know what? If the first step for them is asking for prayer and realizing, hey, someone knows me and someone cares about me, and yeah, that's not just the church, that's God, then that is an absolute win for us. And I love it. And I would absolutely, please do it. Just do the trial. Don't do anything else. I promise you this is the way to go. Text to church is it.
I love it. And that's why we do a trial to begin with, right? Like we want to work with churches where we're a great fit. If we can help you to more effectively connect with your community, then we want to partner with you. And if we can't, then we want you to go and find somewhere else that's going to be a better fit for you. And what we find is that most everyone who starts a trial and uses the platform, they fall in love with it because it's not rocket science, or it's not like we're doing some crazy thing. All we're doing is helping you to leverage the tools of today to connect with your people. Your people are already sending text messages. It's just a matter of, as a church, do you want to join in those conversations? Because they're happening. And we try to make that as easy on you as we can. And before we jump off, I've got just one last kind of sequence of questions that I would love to dive in on around plan a visit. And I know you guys have recently implemented that strategy, and I would love to know, because I know you weren't doing it for a long time, and then you recently jumped in on that. What was that process like for you all to make that decision to do it? And then have you seen any returns on that investment of your time to get that set up?
Yeah, so I wish that I had a better excuse as to why we didn't do it for so long. I really do, but I do not. We had seen that it was a thing. We had never had one on our website before. And to be honest, I was just a little bit nervous because I do our website and I don't have a lot of HTML or any of that kind of stuff. We have a WordPress website, but my knowledge is kind of limited. And so I was very nervous about breaking our entire website. And I honestly thought it was going to take a very long time. And as we have already discussed, I wear 37,000 hats, and there just wasn't a lot of time to be had. Finally, at some point, I couldn't even tell you what made me decide to do it, but I was like, nope, I'm just going to do it because who cares? It's going to be fine. I'm going to do it. And so I went through the whatever on the Text in Church, the steps of how to do it, which were far simpler than I expected. And then somehow I managed to even do it on our website with my very limited knowledge. Which was awesome. So to begin with, it was just really cool to see it right there on our website. It's on all the pages, it's there, it's easy. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And again, just being transparent, I did not expect a lot of responses. We put it up on a Wednesday, and that week we had 2 families respond and say they were coming in. They gave us their kids' first names, and I about lost my mind because I just didn't expect it. It was crazy. And so we had 2 families do it that week. We got their names of their kids. They were able to walk in, have their children's information already ready to go. We knew who they were. We were expecting them. And hospitality that we already thought was fantastic was just, man, right to the next level. I mean, imagine walking into a building and so, oh my gosh, you must be Samantha and this must be Jonah and Rachel. Guys, I'm so glad you're here today. Let's get you checked in. Let's get mom a seat. I mean, it's nuts. It was crazy. It really was.
That is radical hospitality. And what's interesting is that experience is happening whether or not you have a plan a visit feature on your website or not, right? So like let's just think about for a moment what that experience could have been. So that family went onto your website and they looked at everything looked great, and they said, you know what, I think let's try it. We'll go there on Sunday. And then they close the website, and then life gets busy and they stay up late on Saturday night watching a movie, and they wake up a little bit late on Sunday and like, let's just skip it, right? Like they had no connection. No one's gonna know they're not coming. They don't have a life pattern of attending church. Like odds are, even with the best of intentions of showing up, they're probably not going to actually follow through on that. But because they planned a visit, someone on your team had actually connected with them and said, we're looking forward to seeing you. Like you had started a little bit of a relationship. Now they somewhat have an obligation to come because someone's expecting us. Like we already told them we're going to be there. Like it's a lot harder to miss when you have taken that little teeny tiny step of just saying, hey, we're coming. So that I think is just mind blowing. There's something like 17 million visitors go to church websites who do not in a year who do not attend church. So there's 17 million people in the United States that do not attend a church, but yet go to a church's website at some point. So that's 17 million opportunities that we have to connect with those folks. They were looking, they were trying to connect, and we may or may not do our part to connect with them. And so I think, although the plan a visit feature is this little teeny tiny thing, so just a form on your website. It's the concept is simple. Again, that seems to be a theme of what we're talking about. But when we provide that little micro step for someone to take, oftentimes that can be the first step in their journey as they look to find God. And so I think although it's small, I think it has profound impacts on our ability as a church, as a local church, to actually connect with our community. If we can make it simple for people who do check us out online to actually connect and engage with us, I think it's a really, really big deal.
The other piece to that too, I think, is that we can write words on our website all day long that say, you're welcome here, you're invited, we'd love to have you. But it's another step when there's a button that they click that says, we really want you to come here. So it's showing stuff with our actions and not just our words to me too, and following up and building trust in just another way.
Yeah, and I think the other thing it does is it sets a tone of, like, we're a church that gets it, we're relevant, we're preparing for you, we expect you to come. We know that people in the community are going to our website and then they're coming to our church. Versus you go to a site and it's all about their members. And so it's like, oh, well, I'm not sure if they have a space for me, or I don't think they get many visitors, so we might not fit in. Like, people are making those assumptions based on what they see on your website. And so if they're going to make assumptions, let's help them to make the proper assumption that we are ready for them. We're eager for them to come and engage with us. And I think that's just a simple but a really important thing that we need to get our language right. And words matter. And if we 100%. Can be really intentional, that's an awesome opportunity. My last question for you is, what big plans do you have for the future? And what is it what's next for you guys? It may or may not relate to Texan Church, but as your church is continuing to grow and to embrace this new normal that we live in, what are some of the big plans you all have?
So we've really just started thinking again and brainstorming about invite activities that we can get folks in the community to come on our campus. And we call them invite because there's probably folks who don't have any prior experiences with us. Maybe they've driven by, maybe they have come to one other, but these are low risk events for a family to come and check it out and make sure that we're not crazy before maybe they would come back for another event or even a Sunday. So we've really begun to plan for things like that. We have one coming up that's a family splash night, and so we'll have big blow-up slides with hoses and all kinds of stuff, and then we'll have some games for 20s and 30s there as well. We'll be selling snacks and things like that, and so that is one of the ways. One of the big things that we've got coming up that we're excited about. Our youth is in full court press right now, and so this is about Texan Church, but they actually are going to be using Texan Church for a scavenger hunt all around town. And so they're going to be setting up all of these steps and keywords and videos that are ready to go, so that as people unscramble and figure out the keyword, they'll text it in to be automatically getting the clues for the next thing, all this crazy stuff. So we've got some really cool things planned just in the next couple of weeks here. So we're excited.
Oh, I look forward to hearing about that. As you were talking about inviting, one of the conversations I've been having with several pastors over these last few weeks is, we think that it's possible that during the pandemic, when we were told by everyone, doctors, everyone was telling us, like, don't be around other people, which meant another way to interpret that is, don't invite people to things. Like, don't get together, don't invite. And so we've learned this life pattern of not inviting. And so I think we as the church, I think one of the tasks that we have as we move forward is reteaching our community that to be invitational, right? I think that's something we used to be really, really good at. And I think we've lost that art. And so I think that is one of the big things that we can be doing over the next months and probably years, is to help our community to remember how we once did this in the past, right? Like, we used to be so dependent upon asking and inviting your friends, your neighbors to come and engage with us. We have to prompt our people to do that again. And so I think by putting on small events that are non-churchy, right? Like non-threatening, non-scary to the non-church. I think that's a brilliant way to be able to do that. And so I want to applaud you guys on all of the creative ways that you guys are reaching into your community and finding all the people that are ready and have been missing, that we have been missing. And so super proud of all of the ways that you guys have leveraged Texan Church to do that much larger mission. And we're grateful for the opportunity to be a little tiny part of your all's ministry and the work that you're doing there in Jacksonville, Florida. We are grateful to you, and thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom with all the church leaders that are tuning in, because these small steps make big differences. And so setting up different systems that you'll be able to then go back to month after month, week after week, is just a brilliant way of doing ministry. So thank you very much for sharing all that.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. And, thank you guys for creating a product that enables us to be able to do this. This is a way for us to connect even deeper and better, but not just with folks, but to help connect them to God and new relationships and new communities that maybe they weren't getting before. So thank you guys again for all that you all do.
Absolutely. It's been a great conversation. Thanks so much.